Hello, good morning, everyone. Welcome to 3 NLP techniques for effective communication. John and I are so excited that you're here today, and we're going to dive right into things. We're going to ask you to consider these questions as we demonstrate two completely different ways to have an actual conversation. It's actually going to be the same conversation presented in two different ways.
Okay, guys, so take a note here of how these conversations differ. Consider these questions, and hold on. We're going to get this slide up here for just a quick second here. We're having a little bit of a technical difficulty, and we need to get this resolved here. So, Kara, it's not letting you share right now?
No. I could sing and dance it.
Yeah,
Although,
we need these guys to see the questions here.
Absolutely.
Oh, I got an idea. Give me 2 seconds. I think I can do it that way. Okay, can you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay, beautiful.
Yay.
All right,
Yay.
so here we go.
Here are the questions we want you to consider with our two conversations. How do you experience the two conversations? What's different about each conversation? What works in the conversations and what might not work? What doesn't work within them? And if you could learn some techniques for the communication that worked, what would it do for you? So those are the questions we want you to ponder as you hear John and I go through a couple of brief role plays here.
Okay, Kara, you ready?
I am.
All right, so Kara, I'm a rainmaker. You're a buyer agent on my team. You ready?
All right.
Okay, so Kara, tell me exactly why you haven't been able to get any of your buyers under contract.
Well, you know what, John? It's just that market is tough out there. It's the market.
Yeah, so I mean, if it was my buyer, I'm absolutely certain I could get them under contract.
Well, you know what? That's great. And again, I'm telling you, you don't understand the market right now.
You just need to get them going, Kara.
Well, you know, I am. We're writing offers, but the market isn't responding to those offers.
You know, the market this, the market that. I am just so frustrated.
You know, so am I. And you know, I don't know what else to do. I don't know.
It really seems to me that you are not committed to your goals and maybe not committed to this team.
You know, I am 100% committed to my goals in this team. And I think you're just not hearing me, John. It's the market. It's not me.
All I know is that if you do not get these buyers under contract, I'm either going to take the leads away or outright fire you.
Well, you know what? If that's what you have to do, but I really don't see how it's, you know, it's my fault. It's the market.
Okay, let's stop this conversation. Let's reset the energy. By the way, everybody, please place yourself on mute if you're not Kara or me. And Clarence, if you see anybody that's not on mute, please make sure they get muted immediately. Clarence is here helping us drive on the back end. Okay, good. Let's reset that energy.
Reset that energy, please.
I need to take a shower. What about you? Okay, let's do that again. Here we go. Hey, Kara, I've noticed that lately we haven't gotten any buyers under contract. How about we work together to improve your results?
You know what? That would be great. I could really use some help.
Okay, so I'd like to have that conversation that helps you succeed at a higher level. How would you feel about that?
Well, I would feel really good.
Good. Okay, well, you know, it seems that you're writing quite a few offers, yet nothing's getting accepted. So what's causing them not to get accepted?
You know, John, we're in this market and it's just so competitive. And, you know, I'm doing my best to educate the buyers, and our offers just aren't getting accepted, or they don't want to write them at the price that they need to in these multiple offer situations.
Okay, so thanks for sharing that with me. What skill improvement do you believe, what personal skill improvement would make the greatest difference to you getting these buyers under contract?
Well, I guess maybe if we could role play how to, I don't know, how to better present the offers or to the buyers so that they understand where we need to price.
where we need to price. Hey, there's one other thing that I've noticed in some of the offers from my
Uh-huh.
standpoint that we might be missing. Did I notice that most of the offers that you've written are placing offers that are contingent right now?
Yeah, they're just afraid, John. They don't want to sell their place and then have nowhere to live. I mean, this
Yep.
is a huge issue in the market right now.
Understandable, right? Yet if you were a seller in this market, what would you think about a contingent offer?
I'd probably look for those that were not contingent. I
Okay.
mean, if the price was the same, I'd go with the one that didn't have the contingency.
All right. So when you said role play just a moment ago, I'd like to know specifically what skills would you improve in that? If we were to role play together, what skills would be improved by that role play?
Just how to have the conversation. Because, clearly I'm finding out through this, John, that maybe I'm not strong enough in explaining to them why it's so important that they be non-contingent.
Okay. So we want to work on the skill of submitting offers that are non-contingent and coaching our buyers into better pricing. Is that what you said?
Yeah, that is what I said.
Okay, just double checking. So how would you feel about those scripts and dialogues that you mentioned, us working on this every day until you feel like you have these two unique skills mastered?
Oh my gosh. Every day. Do you- that would be great. Do you have time for that?
Well, if it's about your success, we're going to make time for it.
Wow. Okay, then yeah. I mean, that would be awesome because I've got this pile of buyers here that we can't get accepted.
Okay, now, Kara, just between us, we're on the team together. How was this conversation for you? What worked?
Well, um, I feel like you really want to help me and our clients.
Okay, and what do you feel we could have improved in our conversation here together?
I can't think of anything. I think this was you know, again, this leaves me feeling like you care about me hitting my goals, but more importantly, you know how important it is for me to have my clients win in this market. And
All
it
right.
doesn't feel good when I'm not winning for them.
Understandable that you would feel that way. I mean, you want your buyers to hit their goals. I know that about you. And just I want to acknowledge you very quickly here. From my standpoint, you were extremely coachable in this conversation, and I want to acknowledge your growth mindset.
Well, thank you for that. You make it easy as the leader of the team.
All right, so folks, what'd you hear? Reflecting on those questions. Let's get some ahas on this one. So let's get some takeaways on this one.
Partnership.
Partnership. What else?
Partnership, love it.
Self-discovery,
Meaning what?
that you led the agent to self-discover what the issues were, whether it's mindset or activity or skill.
Mindset, activity, or skill. Fantastic. What else?
Solution focused.
Solution focused.
You came from contribution in that too.
How so, Barb?
So that you wanted to help her, you wanted to build her up and get her the skills that she needed.
Even in the role play. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you listened to her problems or issues, and you didn't demand. And in the first conversation, there was more management demanding or putting pressure. Whereas in this conversation, you listened and asked her for how you can solve the problem.
Great point, Jim. Great distinction there. So going
In
back.
the first,
Oh, sorry.
this is
Let's have one more.
Janet, sorry.
That's
In
okay.
the first conversation, you started out with asking why this was a problem, and it immediately put her on the defense.
Yeah, great observation on that. It did put her on the defense. And I was going to ask the question to the group here about what didn't work in the first conversation. Jim brought up some really great stuff there. What didn't work?
The first conversation was all about you, how much better you were and you could do it. So it was very accusatory. That's what I heard.
Even in the role play, what was your energy difference there, Kara?
Oh my gosh, that's what I was just going to say, John. This was a role play and I felt horrible. on the receiving end of that. Like literally, I just felt I could feel my energy, like myself shrinking back into myself, and then getting into like fight or flight mode. Like I might have wanted to punch you at one point. I'm not sure.
It's okay. I'm glad we're on Zoom. Okay, good. All right, friends. So, Kara, let me go back to screen sharing here, and I think you have the next part, my dear. Let's tell everybody about a little bit about the call, since we just went straight into the deep end here, didn't we?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So first and foremost, I want to take a moment. I mean, you already know our names are John and Kara, but I want to take a moment to let you know that I am so excited to be here today with John Vander. He is a PCC, which is a very high accreditation in coaching from the International Federation of Coaches. He's a trainer of neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, and he is a MAPS head coach, and he's one of my mentors and one of my friends and one of my coaches. And I am just so excited to be here with him today.
Yeah, and you know what? I want to echo that sentiment. I'm excited to be with Kara. Kara is a mega agent on a rapidly growing team. She's the owner and the leader of a rapidly growing team. She's an investor in a great market center. She's also a master practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming, and my partner in crime as a MAPS head coach as well. And this is just going to be a fun call for me.
It absolutely is. And now you all know why we always say NLP instead of neuro-linguistic programming. Our mouths want to move way faster than actually spitting out all those vowels and consonants. And before we really dive into the meat of the call, I just want to give gratitude, and I know John does too. And I want to thank you all for being here. It's a couple days before Christmas for those that celebrate Christmas. We're in the middle of the holiday season. We're wrapping up the end of one of what we can probably consider our weirdest, strangest, most unprecedented years in our history, in our lifetimes. And yet you're taking time out here today to work on yourselves and to make yourselves better. And I cannot wait to see the ripple effect that might have. John, what would you like to add to that?
I just want to thank everybody here. You're here because you're a valued MAPS client. And guys, we just love that we can bring you these calls and help add value to you. And that, again, what Kara said, you've taken the time to be here to learn for us to grow together today. So let's talk about our goals for the call today. We basically have three main goals, okay? And these are all very fun. Kara and I got together, we started working on this last month. And we said, what do we really want the call to accomplish, and how are we going to add value to the folks that are going to participate? So number one, the first thing is we want for you to gain a greater understanding of three core NLP communication concepts. Many of you know NLP is a science of how master communicators communicate. So they've broken this down into a series of systems and models. We're going to begin to teach some of that to you today. The second goal is that you will immediately be able to be empowered and have more effective conversations the moment we're off the call. All right, so I think about many of you have holidays and maybe some vacations coming up. How cool would it be that you would be able to implement what we're going to talk about today and cause a greater experience over your next week or so? Finally, the third, have fun. We want you to have fun. When you start really getting to know this stuff, it really becomes fun. It really becomes fun, because you're consistently experimenting. You're running your own personal communication labs all the time. And we want you to have fun learning the way that master communicators think about their conversations. Kara, what have I left out?
I love the part about having fun. And what's really cool about the stuff that we're going to teach today, John, it isn't applicable just in business. And it actually starts with life, right? We start communicating from the day we're on this earth, and maybe even before, if we're kicking while we're in the womb, right? Till the day we leave it, communication is so key. So when, it struck me when you said, as we get together with family for the holidays, things like that. I mean, some of the things you're going to learn today can have practical applications the moment you leave this call. And I'm excited to get going on that. So should we tell them about the three concepts we're going to talk about today, John?
Yeah, why don't you cue this up for us?
Absolutely. First is we're going to talk about being at cause in every conversation. You probably understand, cause and effect, something causes something else. Well, we're going to talk about and help you frame up how to be at cause in every conversation you actively participate in. The second thing we're going to do today is we're going to talk about asking powerful questions. And they're going to move the conversation forward. And with that, we're actually going to throw in a couple bonus NLP techniques as well. And then the third thing we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about giving and receiving feedback. And that's going to be so that you can get clarity and strengthen relationships. And I mean, feedback, it's the breakfast of champions, right? So we want to know how everything we're doing is landing with the other person, because when it's landing in a positive light, everybody moves forward. So that's it. And
Okay.
now go ahead, John.
Oh, it's okay. So Kara has delivered the communication concepts that we're going to cover.
Mm-hmm.
And now we'd like to turn it over to you and just take a moment to consider this. Based on what we've already done, showing you the role play, showing the concepts that we're going to cover today, what do you want to get out of this call? What do you want to get out of this time that we're going to spend together today? And how would you know that it had been a great use of your time? So take a moment to write that down. We're going to ask you guys to put some answers in the Zoom box or in the Zoom chat in just a moment. Again, what do you want to get out of this today? And how would you know that it had been a great use of your time? All right. What do you want to get out of today? And how would you know that it had been a great use of your time? Okay. So let's take a look at some of your responses. Some of you are already putting it in the Zoom. I love that. Donald, how to influence folks in a positive way. Thanks, Donald, for putting that in. Kara, what stands out to you in the chat there?
You know, there's lots of great responses. I love being able to have a difficult conversation or give difficult feedback in a way that doesn't feel personal or negative, and yet it feels helpful. There was another one in here too. You know, as people add more, they jump around. How to have better conversations, learning how to direct the conversation, better strategies for communicating with my rainmaker, so important. Be a better leader to my team, have empowered conversations. Pivot the conversation when going negative, right? Just because it starts out that way doesn't mean it has to stay that way. Effective communication skills, deeper understanding of NLP. Oh my gosh, so many. I'm hearing a lot of how to better communicate, how to listen deeper, and how to just have great conversations, John.
Yeah. So I'm going to invite, and there's one that really stood out to me. I love how effective communication to lead my team. There's a couple others. I was a lot of these are kind of a similar vein. Here's what I'm going to ask you guys to do. At the end of the call, I want you to come back to whatever you just wrote down and see how well this call helped you deliver on your intention for the call. Okay. All right. So going back to sharing here, and I think we're going to work it and see if I can get it to work now. Not yet. Sorry, guys, we don't know what is going on with our Zoom this morning on the technical difficulties here, but we're going to work this out. See if we got it now. No. As many times as we've used Zoom this year, it is very strange as to why this is happening. Give me 2 seconds. All right, I'll tell you what.
You know what, John? I think let me try and grab it again.
You have it now?
Let's give it a go. Let's see. Yes.
There we go. Booyah.
All right. So give me a moment.
Thank you, everybody, for your patience. Okay.
We do know what we're doing.
We're going to start, well, usually. Okay, so we're going to start with being at cause. All right. So I'm going to ask you guys to consider some questions here. We're coaches. We like to ask questions. Being at cause, you can hear in the language, the first word is being. So it starts with who we are being. Now, what does this mean? Many of you know the bold law, be, do, achieve, or maybe the older version of the bold law, be, do, have. And remember what this basically means is that who we're being determines what we do, and what we do creates our results. So I'd like to hear a couple of you answer this in the chat. I'm going to throw a question to you, which is, what does being empowered mean to you? What does it mean to be empowered? Let's throw a couple of people's answers in the chat if you got something. What does it mean to be empowered? I want to hear from a few of you on this. Knowledgeable, thank you, Tyso. Taking initiative, Katie. Confidence, excellent. Deanna Henry, awesome person here. Confidence, there it is again. Confident to make decisions, Tyler, great point. See a lot of confidence going on here. Jennifer Tim, excellent. The confidence to know what to do and say in each situation. Fearlessly authentic, Cheryl, great point. Freedom, trusted to get it done. These are some really good answers, guys. So knowing what to do in any situation. So I want to manage an expectation here with that, Todd, just to share something that me personally, I don't personally know what to do in every situation. But that's not exactly what I mean by empowerment. So I want to throw something out that's for you guys to consider on what empowerment means to me, at least for the sake of our conversation today. So consider that being empowered means that no matter what is happening around us, we can indeed bring change to any situation. We ever notice that sometimes when we go into difficult conversations, we have no idea how it's going to turn out? Kara, do you ever experience that as a coach?
Yes.
Okay.
Every day.
Every day. We don't know what's going to happen. And yet, consider that being empowered means that we're going to walk into that conversation not knowing exactly how it's going to turn out, but confident that we're going to move forward anyway. All right. So consider that for our sake of our conversation today. Again, being empowered means that no matter what is happening around us, we can bring change to any situation. It does not mean that it's always going to be pleasant, because sometimes the most empowered actions are the ones that make us highly uncomfortable. Remember, they talk many times, growth lives outside of your comfort zone, or no pressure, no diamonds. Well, sometimes that discomfort is exactly what we must lean into in order to actually be empowered. That discomfort is usually, for most people, the sign of growth. The sign of growth. Okay, so here's a check for yourselves. We'll talk about this quite a bit today. If we're being empowered, are we at the effect of the situation, or are we going to affect the situation? Will the situation be happening to us, or will we be happening to the situation? You guys, can you sense the difference? Affect, absolutely. Thank you for putting that in the chat box, those of you that are participating. Absolutely right. So it doesn't matter what's happening around us, we're going to happen to it. That's the mindset of being at cause. That's why we've got to start there. Did you notice in the first role play, was that person at effect or affect? And in the second role play, was that leader at effect or affect? So you guys can start there, okay? All right, now, it brings up a great point, is that in order for us to affect the situation, we have to know what we want our outcome to be. And this involves on getting clear of our intention and setting a goal in communication, whether it's about something in business, whether it's about something with your family in the next couple of weeks, whatever it is, we want to be clear on, if I'm going to have this communication, I want to know what my goal is going to be. Perhaps it's to change a behavior or whatever that's going to be. Great communicators think about what the goal of a conversation is going to be and judge the success of the conversation based on whether or not the conversation has reached a goal. And I know I'm using the words communication and conversation interchangeably here. And I hope you guys get that in order for us to have communication with another person, it's going to involve some type of a conversation. All right. Here's a cool way of thinking about this. is that when another human being changes their thinking and their actions based on a powerful communication, the person who led the conversation can be said to have influence. You notice on the previous slide, we talked about influence being part of how we know our communication is effective. Yeah, thank you, Kara, for putting that back up. Just so everybody's got that again one more time. Leadership involves influence. And I want to make sure here that we're really, really clear that influence has nothing to do with position. Influence has nothing to do with who reports to who. It has nothing to do with an organizational chart and who's at the top. Because every time we communicate with anybody around us, we're actually influencing two ways. However, powerful communicators are very deliberate about their influence, as they know it is the success measure of leadership. We also know this about great teams. Great teams have great team members that will influence the leader. In our role play, Kara was able to influence me as to what needed to happen because she told me how things were seeing it. The buyers weren't agreeing to prices. So now I'm going to take that influence and be influenceable as a leader. It's a two-way street in influence. Is that making sense to everybody? You can give me the thumbs up or you say yes in the chat box. Okay, thank you. Awesome. Okay, so now, Kara, next slide, please, dear.
Thank you.
So there's a 4-step process. We've already talked about being at cause. We're talking about being an influencer. So what does, when we're being at cause and when we're being an influencer, what is the process to actually doing effective conversation? The first is, as we've already mentioned, to establish a goal. Here's some questions that we might consider in establishing a goal. You might want to jot these down, and I'll put these in the chat box a little bit later when Kara takes over, so you don't feel like you need to scribble right now, okay? Here's a couple of questions that you might ask yourself. What is the goal of this conversation? What do I intend, or what's my intention for the conversation? What would a successful outcome look like? And is this a win-win conversation? Am I going to cause the other person to win? And is that in turn going to cause me to win as well? Okay, I'll put these up in the chat. They're great questions. So start with a goal. Step 2, plan the conversation. A couple of you mentioned this earlier in the empowerment question. Planned, confident, knowing what you're going to say. Here's some things to ask yourself when planning the conversation. What will I say? What points must be made? How does the other person see it? Or how might the other person see it? What do we need agreement on? And how would I know we had buy-in? What do I mean by buy-in? That means we are leaving the conversation on the same page as to what's going to happen next in our next steps. Right? If we don't have buy-in, we're going to be repeating this conversation again. Please remember that, guys. Step 3, conduct the conversation. Here's some big ones. I think I want to make sure, who was it that said this just a moment ago? Somebody put this in the chat box. Forgive me for not remembering who it was. It was brilliant. We got to monitor for emotions. When we're in the conversation, we got to monitor for the emotions. If the other person starts becoming angry or agitated or frustrated, we might need to back off for a moment. And we can monitor for these emotions because if things get uncomfortable, the best thing that we can do is stay curious. Ask more questions. Hey, Kara, I noticed it seems like you're getting a little angry. What's going on? We come back to the win-win intention that we set. Remember establishing the goal. I want to help Kara get more buyers under contract. Is that win-win? Yes, 100%. And if I come back to that intention, I can say something along the lines of, Kara, I just really want to help you win at a higher level. And I want the team to win at a higher level as a result. So how about we come back to that and agree on that intention? You can use these things in the conversation if you're clear on your goal. Finally, the 4th part here that I mentioned to conducting the conversation, get back to the original goal. We want to get to the bottom as to why the buyers aren't getting under contract and figure out an action plan moving forward to cause that to happen. All right, last, step 4. This one's really important, guys. Gain agreement and commitment to the next steps. This is where we do the check at the end of the conversation. Are you seeing it differently? Temperature check. We call it the temperature check. How are you feeling about this conversation? And then make sure that we end the conversation with what exactly will happen next. We get really clear, specifically what will happen. How will we measure it? By when will it get done? Basically, make next steps in the form of what you guys already know, SMART goals. Okay, so high level, being at cause, being empowered, leaning into the discomfort, knowing that you have to be an influencer. And then the second, here's what we do. We establish a goal, we plan, we conduct the conversation and pay attention as it's happening. And then finally, gain agreement and commitment to the next steps together. Kara, what am I leaving out of this? What would you add to this?
I think you put a nice bow on it all, John. It definitely steps to put everyone at affect, not effect.
Well said.
Excellent.
Well said.
Excellent. So, I'd like to take a moment again to acknowledge all of you for being here today and for being at cause for your communication and your communication skills. After all, your active participation clearly demonstrates that you're living the bold law. Your business grows to the extent that you do. There's research that supports the theory that the language you speak largely affects and may even determine the way you actually experience the world. From the way you perceive what's actually happening to the way you sift through all you're experiencing to the way you think and then the way you react to it. Your language is literally creating your world. So doesn't it make sense that it can create a new or a different world for your listener too? Take a moment and envision what your life will look like when you're communicating more powerfully and moving people to, let's say, moving people toward their goals even faster. We're getting them into action. We're moving them faster. When people anchor strong feelings of positivity to you, what type of ripple effect is that going to have on your business, on your relationships? You all know that people like, trust, and they refer people who make them feel good. What impact could that have on their life and those around them? Take a moment, use the chat box, and share specifically how this could impact either you or those around you when you're showing up in a powerful state. So what's your blink response?
Clients for life. I'm reading some of the chat here, Kara.
Thank you.
We want to repeat the question one more time and let's get everybody that has something to say here in the chat. This is a participation sport, my friends.
Actually, when we're communicating powerfully, what impact could that have on the life of those around you and the people that you interact with?
Oh, Michelle, what a great point. Making me more efficient, better conversion. So great that you took that, right? How much does trust create speed in relationships? Great point. Better understanding of others, more referrals. Fantastic. Deeper relationships. Daniel, great point, sir. Confidence, focus, trust. I mean, this is good stuff, Kara.
It is. And you know what? You know what we're talking about here, John, as they were doing this? We're talking about one word, influence. And guess what? Every single person on this call has influence. You already know that building trust is the foundation of a great relationship. So it's important that we build trust through our communication. And you build trust with your clients by allowing them to believe what you say. One way to have people trust you is to have people feel heard and understood. And we do this with an NLP technique that we call acknowledging and validating. And we're going to break the two concepts down because they are two separate, different things. Acknowledging is simply restating what you thought you heard them say. Acknowledging is hearing. So when acknowledging, we're going to use phrases like, what I'm hearing you say is, in other words, what you're saying is, what I hear you telling me is, so you're saying, Acknowledging, again, hearing, allows the listener to know that you heard them. And when they agree, you can move forward. And then we do the second part, which is validating. Validating is so important because it allows the speaker to stabilize their feelings around a situation. That's key. They're going to stabilize their feelings around a situation. Think about a car. If you're shifting gears, you can't go from reverse right to drive. You actually have to go through neutral to get there. Our minds and our thinking are just like that. And validating gets the mind to neutral. Now, it's important to remember when you're validating that you are not agreeing with them. You're also not judging them. It's simply letting the speaker know that you understand things from their perspective. Remember, you're not agreeing, you're simply letting them know you understand them and whatever they're feeling is okay. So, examples of validating include things like, it's understandable that, or it's perfectly normal when, no wonder you feel, you have every right to think. Now, I'm going to restate those and I want you to listen for one short little word that might be missing from each of these. It's understandable that, it's perfectly normal when, no wonder you feel, you have every right to think. The missing word is actually one simple letter, I. We get the listener to neutral by keeping it about them. And if we use an I statement, it's now about who? It's about you. Yes, you've made it about you. So we're not saying, I understand, or I wonder how you feel this way. We're keeping them to neutral. It's all about them. This is important. We always acknowledge and validate together. They go hand in hand, like, salt and pepper, ham and cheese, bacon and eggs. John, it must be getting close to lunchtime, I think. The big takeaway here is when we acknowledge, it's like saying, I hear you. And when we validate, it's saying, I understand you. Now, let me give you an example that most people can relate to. A child says to you, that's not fair. I probably should have done that a little whinier. That's not fair. And you can acknowledge and validate them by saying, I hear you saying it's not fair, and it makes sense that you would feel that way. You're not agreeing. You're simply hearing and stating that you can comprehend what's causing them to feel a certain way. Now, here's a seller example. The seller's giving resistance on pricing. What I'm hearing you say is you're frustrated with the potential listing price, and it's understandable with all the mechanical updates you've made to the property. We heard them and we understand them. And now let's do one more for an example for a buyer who doesn't want to make an offer on a house that checks all their boxes. We could say something like, in other words, you're saying that this isn't the right house for you and your family, and you have every right to feel that way. So, are you beginning to understand how acknowledging and validating helps the listener get to a neutral place in their mind? I mean, this is a huge step to having influence. Now, I'm going to ask you to use the chat box because I have a quick question for you, and I want your blink answer, your gut answer that pops in your head. In what type of communication do you believe this is effective, verbal or written? Go ahead and quickly put your blink answer in the box. John, let me know what we're getting.
Lots of verbals, a couple of alls, both.
You're
all
very good. It is a trick question. The right answer is both. I mean, acknowledging and validating is effective in texting, in an email, and verbally in a conversation. So many times when we're in written communication, it comes across as confrontational. Why? Because we don't take the time to acknowledge and validate. They don't have an opportunity to know that we understand and hear. Remember, it's important to get the listener to neutral so that they can move forward in possibility. Now, how many of you are curiously wondering, Kara, what do we do after we acknowledge and validate? And well, that's simple. We're actually going to use powerful questions. And let me get there. So powerful questions give us insight because they get the other person in a conversation, they get them speaking and answering questions that actually make them think. meaning they don't have to have a conditioned habitual response to it. You might be wondering, conditioned habitual response, what does that mean? Well, you realize that many times when we answer a question, what shows up is a standard answer for us, a pat answer. It's a habit. Think of this example. You walk into a department store. You know that you are going in that department store looking for a black jacket. The salesman politely greets you. Welcome to Nordstrom. Is there something special I can help you find today? And without even blinking or thinking, your answer is no, thank you, just looking. Now, I know you all already had it in your head before I even said it. Seriously, it doesn't even make sense. You are there for a black jacket, and yet most people are conditioned to that habitual response of no, thank you, just looking. In order to have the highest level of communication with a listener, whether they're a client, a friend, a family member, or a colleague, asking a powerful question is a way to have deeper conversations with them. And to understand that better, let's first address what a powerful question isn't. And I know one of you had said something along these lines earlier. Most of you are taking notes or you have a piece of paper nearby. Write down this simple 3-letter word. I'm going to spell it for you, okay? Write it down. W-H-Y. Yes, it's the word why. Now draw a circle around it and draw one of those diagonal lines through it, because questions that start with the word why are not powerful. And there's 2 main reasons for that. For the most part, we've all been programmed that the answer to a why question is because. And again, I know that popped into your head, which is really the responder's habitual way of not having to think or defend their answer. Because I'm a mom, I use that a lot, because. And when you ask, the second reason is when you ask a why question, the listener will most likely become defensive internally. So for these reasons, let's recognize and agree that asking a why question will not allow us a further peek into the listener's internal representation or their thoughts on a particular subject. So think about this in its simplest form. The word why makes us justify our behavior. Think about the child who doesn't like the answer they've been given. What question do they ask? Right, it's why, over and over. Asking why questions doesn't make us think in a forward direction. It actually makes us go backwards. So there is one perfect time to use a why question though, and that is, they're actually great questions when you're trying to start a fight or if you want to be confrontational. Why did you do that? Why did you think that?
Okay, by the
Why are
way,
you saying
Karen,
that? Yeah.
Leon asked a great question here. I know
Yeah.
we got 15 minutes left, and I want to make sure that we give time for ahas at the end.
Yep.
He asked, what would you replace it with? So
I'm going to do that right now. Let's do that right now. So first, just so you know, powerful questions are open-ended, meaning you can't answer with a yes or no. They're thought-provoking. They get the listener to think, they're clarity-seeking, and they're solution-oriented. And Leon, here you go. This is just for you and everyone else on the call.
Right.
We'd replace them with things like this. Questions that start with these words: how, what, when, where, who, tell me, say more. Remember, all powerful questions are open-ended. However, not all open-ended questions are powerful. So here's a couple examples. How does that fit into your plan? What's the outcome you're looking for? When would it make sense to have a conversation, or tell me more? So let me give you one example where we put it all together. That child says to you, that's not fair. And you acknowledge and validate them by saying, I hear you saying it's not fair. And it makes sense you would feel that way. Tell me what you believe is fair for both of us, knowing your room needs to be cleaned and that you want to go play with your friends. So as you can see, acknowledging, validating, asking powerful questions, man, they are key components to moving a listener forward towards their goals. Now that we know how to ask the powerful questions, let's talk about some feedback, John.
Yeah, and really good content there, Kara. Put it all together high level so far. The communicator is at cause.
Yep.
They've set a goal.
Yep.
They're acknowledging and validating the other person in the conversation to create trust in a relationship. And they're using the powerful questions that Kara has just outlined. You guys see how it's all fitting together as techniques? Okay, good. All right, Kara, next slide, please, dear.
Absolutely.
So we want to go into, there's 2 parts to feedback. Gary says it often. Feedback is the breakfast of champions. NLP says there is no failure, only feedback. That's an entire call we'll do another day. However, we want to talk about the two parts of feedback. First is receiving feedback, and the second is giving feedback. And receiving feedback, there's some things for us to consider here, excuse me, about our relationship with receiving feedback. The first question is, what kind of feedback do we embrace? And I'll put these in the chat in a moment. What kind of feedback do we resist? How proactive are we in seeking feedback? And once we receive feedback, how open are we actually to change? If we do not demonstrate as leaders, as influencers, the ability to be influenced by others, how likely are we to influence them? Now, guys, this next bullet here is one of the greatest ahas of my personal life in terms of empowerment, is that in terms of receiving feedback, when we ask people for feedback, they were already thinking it. If we had a team member that was unhappy, if we had a family member that was unsatisfied, whatever it was, they were already thinking about it. And because I had not received that feedback, I was powerless to do anything about it. So one of the things that we're going to ask here are just two very, very simple questions. And you guys can put variants on these questions depending on your situation. But high level, there's two questions that we can ask that basically help us receive feedback, whether it's team members, buyers, sellers, family members, friends, anybody that you're influencing in your life. The first question is very simple. Ask, Kara, hey, in our work together, what's working well? And then Kara, listen, in our work together, what could improve? What would make it a better experience for you? And notice how both of these conversations start with powerful, open questions, the way that Kara just described them. They're not leading questions. They're not yes or no closed-ended questions. They are going to cause Kara to give me feedback. And if Kara feels weird about giving me feedback, I'm going to make it safe for her to give me feedback. Kara, listen, I want to improve as a partner to you. I want to improve. I want to give you a better experience. So I need you to be honest with me. Can you do that?
Sure.
What's working well? And what could I improve to be a better partner with you? Some version of these two questions on a regular basis with the important people in your life is going to cause a different level of trust and rapport in that relationship, my friends. So remember, powerful communication here. The first part of communication for many people is listening. All right. And many people even say great leadership starts with great listening. Okay, Kara, why don't you talk to us about giving feedback?
Absolutely. So, what is your relationship? Take a moment to think about this. What is your relationship with giving feedback? How honest are you? How flexible are we when we learn new information and perspectives? Now, here's something important to remember, that the person on the other side of the conversation is just that. They're a person, they're a human being. And when feedback helps the human grow, well, the business might grow as well, right? So if we deprive that person of honest feedback, we then become the problem. Maybe the greatest act of compassion that we can actually give someone is to tell the truth. Now, remember this, every conversation should demonstrate some sort of compassion, search for the truth, and openness. I mean, we're not going up to them and bopping them between the ears and saying, you need feedback. They're human beings. We come from a compassionate place, from a curious place, if you will. There's a simple model for giving feedback. And we've got those questions on the screen. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to ask for permission. Might sound something like, can I share some perspective with you that might help you be more successful, or that might be more successful, that you might gain success from? Can I share a perspective? So you're asking for permission. The next thing is you're going to have to share it honestly. I'm seeing that. I'm sensing that. I'm experiencing blank, whatever it is. And then the third is to seek perspective. Ask their opinion on the feedback. What do you think of this feedback? I want to understand your perspective in this feedback. So listen to their feedback on the feedback. It's kind of a loop. Avoid defensiveness, because that never moves anybody forward. That moves everybody backwards. And seek to understand and actually come from curiosity.
Yeah,
John,
Kara,
is there
let's-
anything else you want to add
Yeah,
there?
you know what, that last part, first of all, there's some really, I know you're presenting, so you don't get the
I
privilege
don't.
of seeing the comment or the chat box, but I just want to talk about some of what was said by some of these folks here.
Wait, are
Sheriff,
they giving feedback, John?
they are. And listen, there's been some people here. Jan, I appreciate you. Howard, you guys said less than fully honest. When Kara asked, what's your relationship with, how honest are you? Well, guys, this is your opportunity. Like we said, the moment you're off this call, use this model. You got a team member, you got somebody you're working with, whatever it might be, buyer or seller. Hey, Kara, can I give you some honest perspective? I'm just going to be a buyer agent for a second. Kara, can I give you
Yes,
some honest perspective?
absolutely.
Listen, right now, what we're seeing in the market, buyers that are submitting contingent offers are simply not winning because the inventory is so limited, the sellers are simply turning them down. And yet, I'm here as your agent to honor the choices that you're going to make. So I really want to hear what you have to say about this. Where should we maybe pivot the way that we're approaching making offers?
Well, you know what, John, I can share with you, it's actually causing me to think instead of just give a conditioned habitual response. I have to think about, ooh, and it puts me at cause. It
100%.
puts me as the listener to go, what can I control in this conversation back? It puts both people at cause. Love that.
Okay, so you guys can feel the energetic connection that comes off between Kara as I'm being her agent, she's being the buyer, and you guys can do this with your teams, you can do this with your families. I mean, you guys will nail it. Just go put this model into practice. Okay. Okay, so speaking of feedback, we'd like to take it. We got about 6 minutes left to the top of the hour, and we're absolutely going to honor your schedule. So, Kara, if you could, dear, let's come out of screen share, and I want to open it up for a few minutes of questions, takeaways, ahas. You guys have been awesome in the chat box here. What do you got to say? What questions do you have? What are you thinking about now? What value are you getting out of the call?
One thing I really love about things like this, especially coming from an operations perspective, is when people are able to systematize a conversation. Systematizing a conversation, not just having a script, but having a roadmap is so impactful in knowing how to have these conversations at a high level. And I know one thing that I've personally struggled with is having these difficult conversations and really digging into the nitty-gritty of what's truly going on. So I feel like having this roadmap in front of me, I want to print it out and tape it to my wall so that I constantly know how to stay on track to maintain these positive and powerful conversations to truly inspect what we're expecting out of our team members and of myself.
Yeah, and Dee, I just really want to acknowledge you. I happen to know what you're up to with the Atwood team in Baltimore. And you've taken over a lot of the leadership of both the agents as well as the ISA teams on that team. And you're getting into some real nitty gritty. How do you see these types of conversations benefiting the performance of the rest of the team, like a direct connection maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's really going to set us up for, it's going to, first of all, set me up on how to be a better leader, how to really, truly have tough conversations around their personal goals and their professional goals, to where they're not getting defensive. They're not feeling like they're in a corner, but instead we're truly able to dig into where our gaps and opportunities lie so we can stand in the middle of them and become immovable objects and really have clarity around how we can help better set them up for success, where right now we might not even know where some of those gaps are unless we dig into them.
Dee, I just love what you said. I'm just going to echo this and then we'll move to somebody else. For 2021, Deanna is the immovable object.
That's her word. That's her being, immovable object.
Affirmation right there, my friends. Woo. Thank you for the Christmas present. Excellent. Okay, who else?
For me,
Yeah,
I have
for-
to say that this really puts things into perspective. And if we have a system on how to communicate, then we're able to keep our own emotions in check. You know, we can get very flustered. I just had something happen this week where I allowed that to get in the way. And all of this at the very end was just a huge light bulb. And I said, I didn't communicate. I didn't ask the right questions. I didn't get feedback. And I let the train just go off the rails.
Kara, what would you say to Geraldine here?
You know what, Geraldine? First, congratulations for being here and recognizing how you're going to use the information. And two, what I've heard both Deanna and you describe, and as I can now see the chat box, is Gary always talks about going from E to P, right? Going from entrepreneurial to purposeful. This is a way to have purposeful conversations, and we all win. Everybody wins when we have purposeful conversations. So congratulations for learning and growing here today, Geraldine.
I love this.
Well, okay, so Kara, it's a nice segue here.
Yes.
We're seeing a lot of great here. Will the recording be shared? The roadmap, language of sales, total game changer. What is the best resource? Ian, I just want to acknowledge you here. Roxanne, you too. Any book recommendations along those lines? What is the best resource to start to learn this? Well, why don't you tell them about what we have coming up here?
Well, you know, John and I are excited to announce that early in 2021, we are going to be launching a brand new course called NLP, the Language of Influence. It's going to be focused, it's going to be different than anything we've done before. Details are still to come, and yet it's going to be more. This was a snippet of what we're going to be focusing on. This is not a class for the casual learner. This is a class for people who really want to take their communication to a higher level. And I think Clarence is going to put in the chat box he just did. Go ahead and click on that little bit.ly that says Maps NLP at the end. We're going to gather all of your information, and we're going to be able to share with you the details and sneak peeks, and when we're doing some of our promo webinars and all of that, so that you can join us round about the end of the first quarter, beginning of the second quarter, so you know how to plan. John, what did I miss in that? I'm looking forward to this class. There's so much I can't cram it into a minute.
This is a sneak peek, and our plan right now, our working plan, don't hold me to this yet, is that we're going to introduce content, and then we're going to have you apply that content in the real world. So we're not talking about theory, just theory here. We're talking about theory plus practice. Theory plus practice equals mastery. You guys get that? We want you guys to get everything that you want in your lives. And we believe that communication is one of the most important ways for you to achieve that. All right. So we really are building this content out in a way that's going to cause you to have a different skill set, a different set of tools in your toolbox. Just like Deanna said just a little while ago, to be that immovable, obstinate object. I love that. Thank you for that. And just, again, equip you with the tools to be able to do that.
Absolutely. Well, John, it's the top of the hour. Thank you all for being here.